Boozman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, in regard to the no direction in the law with the Thrifty Food Program, I guess the problem with that is that the no direction law regarding it being revenue neutral. Yet through the technical assistance process, which USDA is intimately involved in, CBO determined that it would be revenue neutral based on the information that USDA gave them during that administration. So I understand your argument, but I just don't think it holds water. I don't think that Secretary Perdue thought that this was going to be a revenue producer of $300 billion, nor did anybody on this committee. So, those are the facts, and that's really what GAO alluded to in their report.
Senator, I, with all due respect, I don't think I necessarily am bound by what Secretary Perdue decided while he was Secretary.
You're bound by what this committee wanted to do, what CBO wanted to do, and we're not bound by you finding loopholes to try and do things as you wish.
Not a loophole, Senator. We're basically taking a look at the law that was passed by Congress directing us to take into consideration a number of factors, and one of those factors is consumption patterns, which have changed. One of those factors is current food prices, which clearly were different than they were 45 years ago. Part of it has to do with the activity of families. Part of it has to do with the mix of what families are purchasing. And to the chairwoman's comments, there was a time when it was assumed that people were spending an hour and a half preparing food from scratch, and that was a basis upon which the Thrifty Food Plan was initially created. Well, I'm pretty sure that's not the case today.
But I agree with all of that. My point is that when you're going to spend $300 billion, you come to Congress and you say, this is a problem, we need to address it. Let's work together to sort it out. So I'm not saying that it did need to be updated or necessarily that we didn't need to spend some money. But the idea that an agency can spend $300 billion without congressional direction, the last bill that was the Inflation Reduction Act was only $750 billion. So this was a massive amount of money, and it wasn't done right. In regard to the comment that I made, getting technical assistance in the answer to simple questions, you all don't get to decide what is a fishing expedition. We have the right to ask questions. We've got 50 outstanding, questions. We've got a bunch of technical assistance that people are trying to write bills from. And again, we simply aren't getting the information.
Well, I don't think that is a fair evaluation, Senator, of the work that we've done over the last 2 years to try to be responsive to concerns that you've expressed. For example, you expressed concerns about a situation in Dumas, Arkansas, and our team has worked.
And you did a wonderful job.
Well, and that's an example of us willing to work with you when there is a need and an issue, and we're more than happy to provide the information that you need to craft a bill, to improve a bill, to determine whether or not provision should be included in a bill.
Well, I'll be glad to make the list of the 50. And again, it's not me, it's us. And I would say that I have to speak for themselves, but both sides are having this problem. I'd like to discuss the Climate Smart Commodities pilot program. This is something that we're hearing from producers. Can you tell us which agencies within USDA and which agencies or offices within the federal government, such as EPA or the White House's Council on Environmental Quality or any other agency, will have access to the data generated under the projects?
The information that's going to be requested from the projects will be funneled through the project leader. Each of these 141 projects have a leader. Those leaders will essentially accumulate the information and will provide cumulative data So it's not a situation where specific information on a particular farmer's farm is going to be provided or shared. But we will have cumulative information because we want to know what works and what doesn't work.
So who will control the data and who's responsible for its protection as well as the protection of the producer privacy?
We're running this program primarily through our FPAC mission area. NRCS obviously will be involved. Farm service agencies are involved.
Will the producers be made aware of how the data that is generated from projects they're involved in, how it may be used?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Current law allows states to waive the time limit for able-bodied adults without dependents when they have more than 10% unemployment, when an area does not have a sufficient number of jobs to provide employment for the individuals. How do you define a sufficient number of jobs?
Well, as a former mayor and a governor, you have a general sense of your state or a general sense of a region within your state that has suffered a particular circumstance or situation. We're dealing with some of those circumstances right now as we speak in Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. You know the impact of a disaster. You know the impact of a plant closing. You know the impact of high unemployment in a particular specific area of the state or across your state. You keep track of that every single month. So you are aware of the economic circumstances within your state. And that is, I think, the basis upon which governors make the decision to request the waiver or not.
When will you start accepting waivers, ABOD waivers?
Well, I think at this point, the current state is based on the public emergency declaration, which expires in May. And I would assume at that point in time, states that are faced with a circumstance or situation where they deem it appropriate to request a waiver will request it. We'll then make a determination whether it's appropriate or not.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Madam Chair.